So I've got great news. I've decided to become a mental health advocate. Right? So I think you get down with that 401k plan. That's got to be better than being a YouTube personality or a blogger or an Alexander Technique teacher, right? Just be a mental health advocate. I want to reduce the stigma around mental illness among YouTube personalities. I think that's my calling. Anyway, stages of sobriety. Stage 1. You stumble into the meeting. This is just my experience. And you identify with almost everybody's share. It's like, whoa, this is exciting. Like, I feel like I have brothers here. I feel like I'm understood. I feel like I'm accepted. I feel like, I think I might have this problem. There's a way out. There's a solution. Here's a better way of life. It's like, whoa, this feels amazing. I just feel so sober right now. No longer obsessed with my images and demons and impulses and urges, but I just feel a sense of calm. You just immediately feel better. Usually if you walk into the right 12-step meeting, at least that's what I did. And I met people and we talked after the meeting and we had so much in common. And so it's like I was making all these new friends and there was this new community. There was a whole way of life. And there were suggestions and there were steps and there were traditions and there were tools. This is awesome. So I came back a day or two later to get some more and just the improvement in how I felt was pretty solid. Like even my fantasies were changing from my very first 12-step meeting for sex addiction. Like I was coming out of it cooler, calmer, just not as obsessive, not as fixated, not as driven, not as demonic. It's like, whoa. I was able to look at women as human beings and the effect faded, after a few hours, few days from the meeting. So I just keep coming back and keep getting that sobriety. And eventually work the steps, and then that's when lasting change in the rewiring of my brain, and started avoiding certain unhealthy behaviors that tend to stoke lust. Just stay away from those materials, stay away from those behaviors, and just got clean, just detoxed, got all that crap out of my life. And it's like, this is fantastic. And so I made the recovery foreground in my life. I'm going to put a link to an article I just read today on how sobriety changes over time. I'm going to put a link in this video description. And so it went from I tried to hit a meeting every day because I just felt better. And then as I worked the steps and developed my recovery, I was still going to a meeting every day, but about halfway through the meeting, I'd get antsy. And so I'd start leaving halfway through meetings. And then I figured I may be going to too many meetings. So instead of going to meetings 5 days a week, I started cutting back to once or twice a week. This is about 2 years into recovery. And then 4 years in recovery, I started going to other programs. Aside from the sex addiction, I realized that other problems like financial and other kind of unhealthy emotional addictions. And so I started expanding my recovery. And then I found, whoa, these programs really help. And so I became obsessed with going to a meeting every day and calling someone in the program every day and working the tools every day. And getting on phone meetings and in-person meetings, and I made my recovery the foreground of my life. It's like, whoa, let's get sober. This is cool. There's a whole community, a whole way of life, and it was exciting, and I was like talking about it with everyone, and even at times I never really rarely had, if I did, a sense of desperation. Okay, so I never had any addiction to alcohol or drugs. I didn't have that level of desperation. I was never like living on the streets eating out of dumpsters. Okay, I'm talking about emotional addictions that just made my life small, just ensured my life didn't quite work, that I was just repeating the same sort of romantic relationships over and over again, and wasn't building prosperity, wasn't developing savings, wasn't really moving ahead with my career. Just tend to get into these unhealthy emotional relationships, and people would trick me, and I'd be mad at people and mad at institutions, and just unhappy, often miserable, but rarely desperate. So it's very common for people, they get into 12 steps usually out of desperation, and I did not have that. But after a while, it takes about 3 years to rewire your brain. And so as your brain gets rewired, the unhealthy behaviors that you used to indulge in, you now regard them as appealing as putting your hand on a hot plate. It's like, you don't want to get burned. So you kind of jump away from unhealthy behaviors, and the calm, which was so fantastic at the beginning, you just kind of, it's the new normal. And it's now, if you're out of emotional equilibrium, now if you're upset, then that's the weird thing. And if you're itching for some kind of fix, meaning some kind of emotional fix, okay, that's the weird thing. So before, there was this frequent desire for distraction and escape from the frustrations of daily life. As you get into recovery, daily life becomes pretty good. And for me, the first time I started going to various 12-step programs, my life immediately improved. And why did it immediately improve? Because I stopped doing things my way. I just became open to taking direction. Since I just stopped doing everything my way and just started being open to direction, like, things immediately improved. There was a greater sense of calm, much less of a sense of crisis. I remember my therapist from 1998, 99 said I felt like I was just, every week we were dealing with a new crisis. Well, that was even 98 to 2001. It's just like I was lurching from crisis to crisis, like manic high to crashing low. And as my sobriety developed, like at first I was all about, I got to get to a meeting today, got to make some outreach calls, got to work these tools, got to find a sponsor, got to talk about it with everyone. That calms down. So I still attend a meeting every day, but they're primarily on the phone. I can actually go weeks without an in-person, face-to-face meeting. And face-to-face meetings are good. There are advantages to them, but I don't desperately seek them out, or I'm not as like, yay, going to a meeting tonight, or like going to meetings every night kind of became my substitute for not really having a social life. It's like, oh, what a relief. I no longer have to feel bad about not having a social life. I can just go to a meeting every night and during the day and in the morning. Just go to meeting, go to more programs, get more recovery, get more depth and width in my recovery. And people say, oh, you're addicted to 12-step meetings, but it was a healthy addiction. But I started being able to take days off in my program. I didn't necessarily have to work tools or work steps or go to a meeting in my program every day. I could take a day off, or I could take 2 days off, the weekends off. Now, I never got to the point where I'd take a week off. never more than 2 days. But there are Jewish holidays, the Sabbath, whatever. I just take time off from my program. And in the beginning, I was working my life around my program. And then, after enough time, my program kind of became my life. And it was less, these were like separate worlds. And I wasn't having to make as many decisions. Like, I like economizing on my decision making. I like to get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, have a rhythm and a schedule for what I do, so I don't have to think as much. I can just go by reflex and just go by healthy habits. Just build up a lot of healthy habits. Some of them are 12-step related, and some of them are Orthodox Judaism, and others are things I've learned from the Alexander technique or strain counter strain physical therapy. But it's just an accumulation of healthy habits. And so it'll mean like less time devoted explicitly to my particular 12-step program, and it's kind of a change from, God, my life's really going to be restricted now. No more promiscuous sex, no more pornography, no more masturbation, no more just enjoying feelings of resentment and rage and anger, no more trying to get even with people. Like all the things that I used to like to do, I can't do them anymore. That was the initial phase of recovery. It's like everything I used to enjoy doing at university is now a felony. And so there's definitely a sense of restriction and discipline. When I got into the programs, like I started writing down every penny I spent and every penny I earned. And like tracking my time. Pushed myself to make more outreach calls than I wanted to. Sometimes pushed myself to go to meetings when I didn't want to. It's like constantly doing things that were unfamiliar, went against the grain, not really what I wanted to do. And then after a while, there was a switch where it kind of became a relief to take direction. Like I could quit trying to figure a lot of things out. I could relax, take it easy. I could take direction from my clients, from my bosses, from my rabbis, even at times from my friends in certain areas of life, from my sponsor. And it's like, whoa, whew, what a relief. I'm not having to figure everything out. I can just take direction. So the first few years of recovery, taking direction was really hard, and it went against my grain, and I was rebelling against it. And it's like, I know better than this jerk, and I might think about, here are all the ways that my life is superior to this person, and yet I'm supposed to take direction from them. So in the initial stages of recovery, first few years, I was always comparing myself to everyone. Like I was either better than or worse than pretty much everyone, at least better than them in certain aspects and worse than them in other aspects. And I would kind of look around the room and go, oh my God, what a loser. At least I'm not as much of a mess as that person, or I've never allowed that person to be my sponsor. He's a jerk and a joke, and don't respect his recovery, or don't respect her recovery. And look at the way that slut is dressing in a 12-step meeting about sex addiction, and she comes in dressed like a hooker. And it would do no good to beat myself up for these thoughts. Go, you shouldn't think this way. The program says nobody's better or worse. So I couldn't beat myself up into recovery, but just over time, this lifelong compulsion that I've had to always classify people as better or worse than myself, it just started going away. And then it's like a feeling of relief, like lots of space got freed up in my head, because I wasn't constantly judging other people. I wasn't constantly beating up on myself or engaging in delusions of grandeur. Like that was my life. I'd walk around after a big blog post and go, "There's a new sheriff in town. His name's Luke Carey Ford." Or I'd go around saying, "You stupid F, you really effed that up. What a stupid mother effer you are." And that's how I'd go through the day, go through life, kind of bouncing back and forth between those states, but inside knowing that I was just incurably, rotten, wicked, evil, flawed, dirty, disgusting. And so, this deep inner sense of shame, it reduced my ability to connect with people, because I'd think much of the time, oh, they'd never want to get to know me. I'm a rotten person. And then other times I'd have some success and I'd think, oh, I'm so much better than this person. Why would I want to waste my time talking to this person? That was just an exhausting way to live. So overall, things just calmed down, and my recovery just became a part of who I am. And I realized that my recovery was expanding my life by staying away from these destructive patterns of thinking and destructive behaviors, and like engaging in things that kind of put my life on the edge. Like living on the precipice was very exciting, but didn't produce a sense of calm and happiness living on the edge. And then with the calm, it's like, oh, there's just more room in my head thinking about other things, thinking about religion or politics or culture or psychology or recovery. Or it's just, my life started expanding. I realized when I stepped away from these destructive behaviors, destructive patterns of thinking, then I could participate more in life. My life got bigger. I had less fear of other people and of life itself. I could go more places. I could do more things. I could go anywhere I wanted, as long as I had a good, godly, holy reason for being there. And when you don't have that feeling of being irredeemably rotten, then your life just starts expanding and blossoming. It's like, oh, thank God. And all those restrictions that I used to kick against, well, these restrictions, they make a lot of other things possible. And all those things I was seeking in that woman or in that photo or in that video, now let me find them in God. Let me find them in holy service to other people. What a relief.